these words, may I now invite Professor Nikos Passas for delivering the keynote address. But before inviting him, let me introduce. Professor Nikos Passas is a distinguished inaugural Professor of Collective Action, Business Ethics and Compliance at International Anti-Corruption Academy, Vienna, and Professor of Criminal Justice at Northeastern University, Boston, United States of America. He also heads the Academic Council of Anti-Corruption Academy. It is for individuals like Professor Passas who contribute towards society like institutions that generations ago, Benjamin Franklin once said, and I quote, "If you would not be forgotten as soon as you are dead and rotten, either do things worth writing or write things worth reading." Professor Passas, please.
Good morning. It is a pleasure and an honor to be with you today. I do not know if you see what I see. Can you see the slides? Yes. Okay. So I would like to share with you some of the global experiences on financial crime and corruption. These are global problems. They are not unique to India. Unique may be some features, but the effects are equally devastating in India as they are in other parts of the world. I suspect that you will identify some of the challenges that I will mention as present in India as well, and you will be able to link those challenges with what the Academy here can offer to address those challenges and move things forward. So, the world in general is facing a growing problem of cross-border crime. We have new types of crime and new methods. And we have a democratization of crime in the sense that things that used to be done, serious crime that used to be committed mainly by state actors, now can be committed by children, teenagers, young people. And dealing with financial crime has become an extremely high priority at the national, regional, and international level. And especially at times of crisis. And we have different crises, different cycles, here and there or globally. And that is when the effects are felt more strongly. The rule of law is undermined. Human rights are violated. Corruption is a violation of human rights. Security is compromised. Inequality, structural inequality deepens. We have uncertainty and unpredictability, so doing business is a bit of a problem. The normative breakdown demoralizes and creates a spirit of defeatism, especially among the youth. And the economy goes down. We have slow or no economic growth. To visualize some of the problems of corruption, let me give you some pictures. And these are pictures, some from India, in fact. These are completed projects funded by the World Bank. This was supposed to be a rural school. And as you can see, it is used for storing some vegetables. These are hospital facilities. This is a delivery table. This is what a multi-year, decade-year road looked like after the first rain season. And where did the money go for all these things? Here is one example, a villa in the United States. You look at construction and the signs of corruption and the problems are visible to the naked eye as construction is taking place. All you have to do is go and see the cracks in those places. And then earthquakes happen, and we have examples in Turkey, in China, and other places where buildings collapse because of corruption in the construction process, and all surrounding buildings are left standing. So what we had in recent years was a number of international standards, convention, at the regional and at the international level. Especially significant is that of the UN Convention Against Corruption that came into force in 2003 and has 178 state parties. That is universal. That's as close to universal as you can get. In addition to that, we have national laws, such as the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, the UK Bribery Act, with extraterritorial application. And then we have non-binding private sector and NGO-promoted principles, texts, good practices, ideas that need to be followed. Despite all this, we're not succeeding. Despite all this, what we do is ethical challenges, compliance challenges, social problems. In addition to anti-corruption standards, we have conventions about organized crime, we have about terrorism, we have about counter-proliferation of WMD. That creates a regulatory tsunami, a major challenge for governments that have to implement all of these things and be evaluated on how well they're implementing them all the time. The only way that this can be accomplished is when you find synergies and when you find ways of implementing them at the same time so that you can actually hit multiple birds with the same stone. We are not doing a good job so far. Let me give you some examples. These are the World Bank Institute's indicators of good governance around the world. This is the world community that you're looking at. Despite billions of dollars that we're spending into good governance, the trend is down to flat. Then you look at Transparency International and Global Integrity Indices. In sub-Saharan Africa, where major projects have been taking place over the years, after billions of dollars spent and a lot of brain power applied to those, perceptions and implementation of anti-corruption reforms are down instead of up in sub-Saharan Africa. You would have thought that ratifying the UN Convention would make things better. The correlation is weak to negative. Then you look at anti-corruption agencies, special bodies like those we have seen in Singapore and Hong Kong. You have anti-corruption authorities and the trend is down. They are considered to be the ultimate weapon against corruption. But in a context of systemic corruption, lack of good thought, advanced thought on institutional design and support and strategic planning, this is the life cycle of anti-corruption agencies. There's a scandal, there's a law, a lot of support, a lot of optimism, high expectations, and then reality hits and things go south. And you see in one country after another, the anti-corruption leaders are taken out, are assassinated, the institutions are abolished, their powers are taken away, they fail. So, in other places, what we see that is the way anti-corruption works is counterproductive. New incentives and new opportunities for fraud and corruption are created instead of fewer. In other places, what we see is the corrupt people, those that we need to identify and sanction, are those who are included and drive the anti-corruption agencies. It's like the wolves watching over the sheep. The result of all this is that the root causes of corruption remain unaddressed. We individualize the problem and go after national character or the greed or need of particular individuals. And anti-corruption plans are taken off the shelf, introduced or forced on countries without understanding and appreciating the particularities and the context of different countries. A major problem is that we are concerned with form rather than substance. We are concerned with outputs instead of outcomes. And that goes across the board. Private sector, government, multilateral, bilateral institutions, academia, NGOs, even civil society sometimes. We have ethics and compliance because we want to emphasize that these two are different and both necessary. Ethics is about attitude. Compliance is about behavior. Compliance is about staying out of trouble with the law. Ethics is about doing the right thing and sleeping well at night. One is about attitudes, one is about behavior, one is normative, the other one is procedural. The key challenge, in my view, is how we converge what is customary, what is happening out there, what is legitimate, what people regard as good, the right thing to do, and what the law says. There are serious disparities between legality and legitimacy in two ways. We have things that are allowed by the law and subsidized by the government, but you look at their effects and there was an organized crime. These are the lawful but awful practices. Look at the risks that global institutions took, financial institutions that brought the world economy to its knees. Look at GMO practices, look at pharmaceutical practices, look at all kinds of things around the world, and you see what I mean. We need to rethink the law. When the law allows acts to take place with devastating consequences for societies, the laws must change. Then you would have another kind of disparity, things that are legitimate, regarded as ethical and useful, but the law criminalizes them or outlaws them. Those are the things that we need to avoid, because otherwise, when we don't, the little project here and there that we do is like drilling holes in the water. It is wasting resources. Even when we have successes, they are irreversible. They're unsustainable. Whatever oasis of integrity we create becomes desert. We lose momentum, credibility, and legitimacy. This leads to demoralization, to defeatism. This leads to the sense that all politicians are corrupt, and populist sometimes protests. Policy objectives are completely lost over bureaucratic changes. We're throwing bureaucracy, rules, and law to the problem. People in societies in transition think that this is the problem of democracy because they associate new problems and new corruption with a new regime. And you say, well, they came together, so it must be the result of democracy. Sometimes anti-corruption rules are used in order to simply clear out the opposition, political opponents. So it becomes, in fact, a corrupt weapon. And the problem is that when you look at society at large, corrupt practices get normalized, routinized, because they solve daily problems. You pay to play, you pay to get things done, you pay to clear customs, you pay to go to school, you pay to get a job, you pay to get things done. The result of that is that you have a situation where it is visible out there when everybody breaks the law and nothing gets done. This is an example of a traffic jam of illegal logging in the jungle, and you can see it, like everybody's doing something familiar. You know what this is. This is in India, and this is parents climbing up the wall of the school on the day of the final exams in order to give answers to their children and family. And it is widespread, and it is normalized, and it is because we do care about our kids and we do want them to have a better future. So why is this all happening? Because we take these off-the-shelf solutions, despite the rhetoric of different agencies that we are individualizing and we are paying attention to the specificities of different countries, and all this is lip service. There is a lack of broad societal involvement. Things from the top will never change. Threatening the private sector with sanctions doesn't work. It produces compliance, ticking the box, and theater. Too much reliance on law. Too much reliance on the process and formal measures. And we do not look at why do we have these rules? What's the point? What are we trying to accomplish? There is no systematic effort to diagnose what the problem is. We call it corruption, but corruption in each country and in each region takes different forms, different methods, different players, different victimization, different effect. You have to take that into account and find out what is the top priority for you. And quite importantly, we promise too much, we under-deliver, and we systematically frustrate people. This symbolizes the lack of synergies and the waste of resources. This is how we use ladders. This is the coordination. This is actually how they built the road and they put the electric pole in the middle. That's how we do anti-corruption as well. So the only way to move things forward is to bring strategy in, reflecting the local context. And the aim is a culture of integrity and accountability. We may have time to talk about that later, but I want to give you another visualization of what I mean by context. And what's wrong with this picture? I've used it to describe on a YouTube video that you can find online the problem of corruption in Greece. It's not a good thing for the car. It's not going to last very long if you treat it like that. And it is against a very good rule that says people are not supposed to be, that many people are not supposed to be in the car. It's not safe. In general, that makes sense. But think about this. They're coming from a village where there are no jobs, there is no public transportation, and this is the only means available to them to go from home to work and bring some food to the table. So you are the traffic warden, what are you going to do? Give them a fine? Take the car away? The fragile communities that will be victimized by that will not let you sleep at night. Enforcing this law is the wrong thing. And if you do not give them a ticket, it's not because you're on the take and corrupt, it's because you sympathize and understand. So in the same way, we cannot fight corruption on an empty stomach. We have to have an alliance of real conditions, be realistic, really, as Rich was saying, and figure out what is the first priority, what is the second, what makes sense, what would be acceptable and sustainable. You have to prioritize. You have to find out what are the top problems, where do you start, and how do you not alienate innocent, good people. It's not because they are unethical, it's not because they are criminals, they are violating the rule because a higher value is on the line. The life and livelihood of their families and their community. So we don't want to create unsustainable situations where people have to choose between doing the legal thing and the right thing. That's the thing that unfortunately we get forced to do with from the top kind of solutions. So what are the basic steps for a strategy? Genuine political will at the top. Political will for the government, turn at the top for corporations. Without that, you can't go anywhere. Secondly, a risk assessment and a capacity assessment. What are the problems and what have we got in place? What good practices do we have that we can leverage, that we can use? That takes you to the needs assessment. What do we need and where do we get it? This has to be done in an inclusive way. That means that you bring in society, you bring in the private sector, you bring in academia, you bring in the media, the political opposition, as well as the governing party. That's the only way you can get to the root of the problem, make this a common baby, and everyone has a stake in its success, and you do not change it and drop it and start from scratch every time the government changes or the people come in. That is how you get a strategy and a sustainable one with continuity. Now, as we heard earlier, the whole point and the whole objective of the Academy is to connect small projects with a big vision. That is what strategy is. You have to take little steps. You have to do things gradually. You have to meet targets in the short term because politicians have to get re-elected, because the budget runs out, because there are practical exigencies. But each small victory has to be a stepping stone to the vision that you have for the 5, 10, 20 years. And it is a long-term project. Not only in India, but everywhere in the world. So the only way you can do this is by integrating the short-term projects with the long-term objectives. In the meantime, simplify the law and coordinate, rationalize the different agencies that perform anti-corruption functions, particularly those that target illicit flows, money laundering, terrorism finance, illegal payments, as well as procurement, the relationship between the private sector and the government. Those are the kinds of agencies that are most critical for asset recovery, for building the economy, for creating a culture of integrity in business and in government. This can be promoted through collective action programs, and this is the sort of thing that we'll be doing at the Anti-Corruption Academy starting next week, full time, where you can actually do things with the private sector, even in environments or localities where the government is unable or incapable of doing much on its own. Non-state actors have a responsibility, have a duty to do something about this. We need to manage expectations and be realistic, just as a good CEO is going to guide the analysts in the stock market not to expect too much so they can beat the expectations and the stock price goes up. This is the way to handle anti-corruption expectations. Always meet or beat expectations. How do you do that? You create and you apply performance indicators, benchmarks, that again, with the participation of society, academia, and so on, will be translatable to the quality of life that better government actually brings. Better service, faster responses, higher quality, more security provided by the government to its citizens. The performance indicators will tell you where you're doing well, where you are stuck, where you're falling behind, and where you need to change the strategy, because we never get the strategy right from the very beginning. And as we go, we need to amend this strategy. This is how we build momentum, credibility, and legitimacy for the long term. Let me give you just a couple of examples of how islands of integrity can be created. This was the tax collection problem in Greece. There was a unit of 3 people in the Ministry of Finance. We had identified ways to find who is not paying taxes. And they provided that information to different offices around Greece, and they were doing nothing. Then they decided, we're going to put that information online, and we're going to redline those who are sitting on their hands and they're doing nothing, and we're going to greenline those who have actually acted. They embarrassed tax offices into action because they were showing everybody had access to this website, and within a few months they collected 780 million euros. 3 people in one Ministry of Finance. In India there are good ideas too, and very good ideas. iPaidAbribe.com, participative budgeting from Bangalore to Pune and Kerala. Those are the things that we need to do, connect them with the broader objectives that we have, and then we can actually get somewhere. Otherwise, anti-corruption looks like this. We're getting in the way of each other rather than helping each other. So let's stop hitting the penguin into the water and let's get things done. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir, for presenting the exact scenario in India and letting us understand how holistically we have to tread upon the path full of challenges. With this, we are heading towards the end of the inaugural session. But before